بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، واللعنة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah for the blessings of the month of Ramadan and for the mercy of Allah that is known as Eid, that we've had the honor to complete the blessed month of fasting. And now we're returning back to life, and it's hard to come back to life after the wonderful period of the month of Ramadan, but it should always be that we don't go back to life as it was before Ramadan. We go back to, a daily schedule with food, water, and coffee, but also the fact that we are better for the experience that we've had and that our character continues to evolve for the better for the sake of Islam. Alhamdulillah, we get to continue our conversation around the lives of the 14 Masoomeen, and we had completed our discussion around the life of our eighth Imam, Ali ibn Musa al-Rida alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And today we'll begin our discussion around the life of the ninth Imam, Imam Muhammad ibn Ali al-Jawad Abu Ja'far alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. This Imam is notable for having the shortest lifespan of any of the Imams. The only of the Masoomeen who has a shorter lifespan in this earth than Imam Jawad is Sayyidah Zahra, Salamullahi alayha, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. But amongst the 12 Imams, the shortest life on this earth that we had, the one who was martyred at the youngest of ages, is Imam Jawad. The life of Imam Jawad, though, even though it only spans a period of 25 years, is still an example of perfection, is still an example of teaching and guiding humanity, as well as the fact that there is no time period where the Imam is immature. Let me explain what I mean by that. A normal person by the age of 25 is just understanding what they want to do with their life, is just growing into and getting a career established. Or even in the earlier times, by the age of 25, there isn't much you know about a person. One of, for example, the ways that we know this is the discussion around, for example, the heroes of Karbala. There's a lot of discussion about, for example, the sons of Imam Hussain, Ali Akbar and Imam Zain al-Abidin at this age. There's a lot of discussion about who was older, what was going on, but there's no clarity in history. And part of the reason for that is biographers didn't really write about a person who was in their 20s. You hadn't really accomplished anything in your 20s that would be noteworthy enough that biographers would be writing about you. I mean, there are exceptions to this. For example, the example of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, who at the advent of Islam is a hero and a champion for Islam and fighting in the battles of Islam and protecting the Holy Prophet and in the company of the Prophet and learning directly from the Prophet, so that wherever the Prophet is incorporated, so is Amir al-Mu'mineen mentioned. That's exceptional. But in most cases, youth didn't have much written about them, and it wasn't believed that they had accomplished enough anything to be noted in biographies. Remember, Arabia was still an overwhelmingly oral tradition. So as a consequence of it being an overwhelmingly oral tradition, was you really wanted to focus, what are you going to spend your memory on? What are you going to remember and what are you going to write about? And it would be unusual for someone to have the maturity, the complexity, the benefit to society, the impact in society, that a historian would remember somebody who's only 25 years or younger than that. Imam Jawad is exceptional in this regard as well, too. That Imam Jawad, though he becomes Shaheed at 25, his period of Imamat is still perfection and representation of the authority of Allah on this earth, teaching the example to humanity, and his biography is very clearly mentioned on many circumstances because of the excellence and the awe-inspiring nature of his character, that even from a young age, his perfection was something that no one could argue with. And which is why you would imagine, what's there to say about a 25-year-old or the biography of a 25-year-old? We have a lot to say about the biography of the Imam. And we have a lot to discuss in terms of the impact of the Imam as well. So we'll mention the life of the Imam and split it into two periods. One talks about his period under the time of his father and before his uh, ascension to the Imam al-Natiq, the speaking Imam, the Imam of the time. And then two will be the life of his that lasted for about 16 or 17 years, of where he is the open public speaking Imam of the time. Even within that, there are some things that we may want to partition out and discuss separately, but let's begin by talking about the life of the Imam from his birth, under the tutelage and the authority of his father. Imam Rida, famously, and we mentioned this, had no children until very late in life. And it was one of the accusations against his imamate that he had no children. When someone would ask him, Yabna Rasulullah, you're the Imam, who will be the Imam after you? He would say, there will be a son born to me whose birth is more felicitous for the religion of Islam than anyone else. And people would be surprised by this statement because Imam didn't have any children until maybe the age of 48, 47 or 48. So they would say, your claim for your son is very great, that he will be the most felicitous birth in Islam. And the reason for that was that all of the doubts about the imamate of Imam Rida were resolved by the birth of Imam Jawad. Normally what happens is that the existing Imam introduces the following Imam and proves the imamate of this Imam. That an Imam says, you're the Imam, and this proves it. Imam Jawad's birth was such that it proved the imamate of his father. So one of the criticisms they used to have against Imam Raza was that you have no children, an Imam has to be perfect. An Imam without children isn't really an Imam. So there were a lot of the Shias who had split into different sects because they said he's really good, but he's incomplete because he has no children. And as soon as Imam Jawad was born, many of those sects died out and they came back under the authority of Imam Raza. So Imam Jawad was that child who proved the authority of his father. And it's one of the miracles of his birth, as well as the fact that many of the sects died out, as well as the fact that from him, continuation until Imam Zaman, there's no new factions that are developed. And this is what Imam Raza is talking about, that to me will be born a son, was felicitous for the religion of Islam. And alhamdulillah, that all these deviations and all these issues were resolved simply by the birth of Imam Jawad. Now, the trials of Imam Jawad begin from the moment of his birth. So famously, Imam Rida had two wives that were with him near the end of his life. One was the daughter of Ma'mun, who Ma'mun married to Imam Rida to cement his role as, for example, the wali-faqih, the inheritor, not the wali-faqih, the wali al-amr, the successor of Ma'mun. So he married one of his daughters to Imam Raza, and this was one of the wives. The other one was a lady by the name of Sabika. Sabika was a freed slave from Nubia, who was actually from the descendants from the family and the lineage of Bibi Maria al-Qabtiya. Bibi Maria al-Qabtiya was a Nubian lady who was one of the wives of the Holy Prophet, who gave birth to the son of the Holy Prophet, Ibrahim. And she was known as a very pious lady. And this Sabika was from that lineage. And famously, it's noted that Imam Musa ibn Ja'far foretold the marriage of Imam Raza to Sabika, and that Sabika would be the mother of Imam Jawad, and told his companions that convey my salam to this Sabika, who will be the mother of my grandson. And it's a great honor for her to have received such a status from Imam Musa al-Kazim. Similar to how we say that Rasulullah sent his salam to Imam al-Baqir through Jabir ibn Abdullah Ansari, Imam Musa al-Kazim sent his salam to the mother of Imam Jawad. And it's a great honor and status for her. She was also known as Khayzuran. She has other names as well as Rayhana. These are titles that were given to the wife of Imam Raza, who happened to be the mother of Imam Jawad. Not happened to be, but who was chosen to be, for her piety, her character. She was of Nubian family descent, so it's believed that she was very dark-skinned. And it is in a consideration that when Imam Jawad was born, that there was some question about the patronage and lineage from which he was born. Let me explain. First and foremost, the birth of Imam Jawad is also authentically narrated by Bibi Hakima bint Musa ibn Ja'far. So one of the sisters of Imam Raza, who was known for her piety and her knowledge, witnessed the birth of Imam Jawad. And she announced the authenticity of this event by describing and saying how he was born, and when he was born, the candles and everything went out, but the light of Imam Jawad was sufficient for us to know that he was born, and he was enough to light the room. And she describes and says, on the third day after his birth, when he sneezed, he said Alhamdulillah in his sneeze by himself. And she was astounded by this and told Imam Raza, and Imam Raza said, my son is even more astounding than this. And he was the only child of Imam Raza. Now, remember how I said that the birth of Imam Jawad brought people who were in other factions and sects back to the authority of Imam Raza and re-cemented them in the lineage of Ahl al-Bayt. Well, not everybody did that immediately. There were those who questioned the birth of a child to Imam Raza, that they said, hey, listen, he hasn't had any kids for 47 years. Is this really his son, or is he lying? And one of the audacities that people had was to question the veracity of the word of Imam Raza and to test the genealogy of Imam Jawad. And again, that his color was of a very wheatish tone, maybe even fair to some extent. There was a discussion to say, could this actually be the son of Imam Raza, because of some difference in tone and coloration of his skin. And the genealogists of the time actually did go and test based upon their knowledge of genealogy that could this be the son of Imam Raza, and they all authentically came back and said he definitely is the son of Imam Raza. But the abject disrespect that it was associated with, that Imam Raza is telling you this is my child, his sister is saying I witnessed the birth of this child, his wife saying this is my husband and this is my child, and in spite of that, people still saying, are you really telling the truth or not? It's beyond disrespectful. It was a very difficult event as well, too, and it was a questioning in the authority of Imam Jawad from the moment of his birth and the truth of his birth. But along with this, there are many narrations that talk about the superiority of Imam Jawad from a very young age. There are some narrations that talk about him speaking in his cradle and speaking as an infant, including the one that we mentioned that Bibi Hakima mentions, that Imam Jawad said, Alhamdulillah, as he was a 3-day-old child in his cradle, and the questioning of his knowledge in that point in time. There are narrations that talk about the knowledge of Imam Jawad from such a young age in the company of his father. That similarly, the way that, for example, Imam Hasan al-Askari would have Imam Zaman in his lap, Imam Raza would have Imam Jawad in his lap and in his company, so that people would become familiar. And Imam Raza didn't hide who the next Imam was. He announced it very clearly that this son of mine will be the next Imam. And at times people would question and say, how is that possible? He's so young. And Imam Raza would reply and say that Isa ibn Maryam was a Nabi from the moment he was in the cradle. Yahya was a Nabi when he was a young man. There's no surprise, no difficulty that Allah can put his authority in anyone that he chooses. There were examples of the character of Imam Jawad as well, too, that would demonstrate his authority. There's a narration that describes Bahlul, who was still alive at the birth of Imam Jawad, used to still act like a crazy man. And in one instance, he sees children playing and another child sitting very seriously. And he questions the child, why are you sitting here when all the others are playing? And Imam Jawad is a very small boy, replies and says, I am pondering the affairs of this world and the difficulties of this time. What business do I have playing when there is such responsibility and obligation? And Bahlul, who was also, even though he played that he was crazy, was a very wise man, he was immediately taken back by the wisdom and the commentary that came from Imam Jawad, and he recognized that this is the Imam of the time. There are other narrations that talk about, at the age of 3 or 4, that Imam Jawad, when he was in the company of his father, was sitting by Imam Raza, and he struck his palms on the ground and stared up into the sky, pondering over an issue, and became lost in contemplation. And Imam Raza asks him, and he says, my son, what happened? And this is for the benefit of those around to recognize and see. And Imam Jawad, at the age of not more than 4, says, Father, I'm thinking of what they did to my mother, Zahra. how they destroyed her sanctity, how they abused her. And he says, if Allah were to give me the ability, I would remove the enemies of my mother from their graves and burn their bodies and scatter them into the sea for the abuse that they had against my mother Zahra. He says, that's what my contemplation is at the age of 4. And Imam Rida replies to those in front of him, certainly he is worthy of the affair of imamat, to demonstrate and show the caliber of what Imam Jawad was. There are other narrations that talk about and say that even after this event, that Imam Jawad from a very young age was someone who would teach and guide humanity, and he was well aware of what was going on in his surroundings and had the perfect representation of what the authority of Allah should be doing. And at approximately the age of 5, that Imam Raza is forced to go to Khurasan, and he leaves Imam Jawad behind at the age of 5. And he instructs all the people of Medina that after me, it is my son that you should be looking to. And again, they would question. So remember the Banu Hashim, the children of Sayyidah Zahra, the Sadat, all of them, the brothers and sisters of Imam Raza are all old, mature men. And they're being told that the authority over you is a 5-year-old. So they would question. Well, one of the signs that they recognized immediately was that they describe and say when it came time for Imam Raza to mount and to leave the city of Medina, they said, we saw Muhammad ibn Jawad go out, pick up sand from the ground and put it in his hair as his father left. And the people asked, Abu Ja'far, what are you doing? And that's it. Imam Raza gave him the title of Abu Ja'far when he was very young as well too. What are you doing? He says, I see in my father's leaving here that I will soon be orphaned by this affair. And it is the action of the orphans that they put sand in their hair for their grief. Imam Jawad's knowledge and understanding was not that of a normal 5-year-old, was not that of a normal child. He was a perfect example for society. Which is why there are narrations that describe and say that even after the separation of his father, and Imam Raza was in Khurasan for between 3 and 4 years between the journey and travel that he was there, that the Banu Hashim used to revert back to Imam Jawad and benefit from him. There are descriptions that describe and say that the old brothers of Imam Raza, or the brothers of Imam Musa-e-Kazim actually, when they would be sitting in the masjid, those who understood the authority of imamat, they would have circles sitting around them listening to their conversation. And when Imam Jawad would enter, them as the leader of the conversation, the leader of authority, would stand up from their place and sit Imam Jawad as a young boy in this position and say, this is your place to sit. And when they would be criticized to say, you're an old man, you're a respected individual, you've lived your entire life in piety, why are you getting up for a small boy? Why are you doing this action? They would explain and tell them that it's not about age, it's about the position in the eyes of Allah that matters. And this young man is the Imam over us, and he has more authority over us than anyone else. And this is important to understand for us, and it's a very important lesson, that at times we take a look at it and we see what we've accomplished in life and we're proud of it. And that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. But the true status is really how close we've attained proximity to Allah, and that is the true value of an individual. And respecting someone who attains a greater proximity to Allah in our life than us is not disrespectful for us, it's not reducing our status in any way. As a matter of fact, it shows that what we have earned with Allah is valuable and important to pay attention to. Allah in the Quran, when He declares and says, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum, that certainly those who are in the greatest of status in the eyes of Allah are those who possess taqwa. This Imam is known as at-taqi, the one who was the most pious of his time. So why would it be surprising that old men would remove themselves from their seats and seat Imam Jawad, Imam Taqi in their place, because of his piety, his proximity to Allah being greater than theirs? This life of Imam Jawad and this demonstration of his authority and character from a very young age was to lay the foundations and to explain to society that Allah's authority is not restricted by age. Wisdom is not a consequence of age when it comes to Allah's authority on this earth. Rather, it is a divine inspiration that has complete authority, and it is divinely settled in such a way that no one can copy and mirror it. And this is why those who can see it and recognize that this is someone who has greater piety in the eyes of Allah don't seem it as disrespect to give authority to someone because they're younger. Rather, they are appreciative that they have met someone who has that high status in the eyes of Allah. And it was a blessing. The time of Imam Jawad, in the life of Imam Raza, when he was sent to Khurasan, was a time of teaching as well. There are descriptions that describe and say that Imam Jawad in this time period would teach and answer questions of as many people as come. There's a very famous event in which it's said that the Imam sat for a period of 3 days answering questions. Now, what's interesting about this waqia, whether it's Sheikh Abbas Qummi or in Kitab al-Irshad, where this is mentioned by Sheikh al-Mufid, there's no description of exactly when this takes place, just that it takes place in his youth. That there is a jalasa, a sitting, a gathering that takes place across 3 days. And each of those 3 days, Imam Jawad answers 30,000 questions of people each day for 3 days. At least 30,000 in an exhaustive session. That over 90,000 questions in 3 days. Imam Jawad would answer the question of every person who would come, solve their matters, solve their issues, fix the problems that were there, and guide people even from his young age in such a way to imagine 30,000 questions. If you were to even imagine that number of questions in one sitting, could you imagine a young boy taking the responsibility to answer those questions? Our kids, we're lucky if we can get them to do something strenuous for 2 hours before they need a nap. How long was this series and how difficult was the situation that Imam Jawad was answering all these questions and guiding people from a very young age? One of the other stories that's told very famously is that when Imam Raza leaves and he puts Imam Jawad in charge of the Banu Hashim, in charge of the family, is when the servants of the house and the people who are in the service of Imam Raza now see their obligation to protect Imam Jawad. And they imagine that people can take advantage of Imam Jawad. So what do? Imam Raza had a habit in the city of Medina that he was the one who helped and guided people and solved the issues of people, and people would come to him for help. And the front door of the house was a famous place where people would gather to seek assistance from Imam Raza. And after Imam Raza, the door of the house was the place where people were gathering to seek assistance from Imam Jawad. But the servants of the house, realizing Imam Jawad is a very young boy, maybe someone will take advantage of him, made it a practice that instead of exiting from the front door where there were questioners, they would use the back door and take him out another passageway. And this is the moment where Imam Raza writes a letter, and he writes instruction to Imam Jawad. And he says, I have heard that they're taking you from the back door. I want you to use the main door. And I want you to always have an amount of money on you to help the needs of the questioners. And if your uncles, because remember, Imam Raza had 18 brothers and 18 sisters. He says, if one of your uncles asks you for assistance, make sure you have, for example, 50 dinars to give them and 25 dinars to give any of your aunts if they ask for assistance. And if you give them more, that's from you. Now, there's an interesting discussion that happens here. That Imam Jawad is an Imam. Why did Imam Raza write these instructions to him? Couldn't Imam Jawad have known it himself and done it himself? Couldn't he have forced these people to listen to him and demonstrate his authority? There's two possible explanations that can be utilized for this, and maybe both of them are valid. That one, it was to show that Imam Raza was aware of what was going on and he was the authority, and that he was making sure that the imamate of Imam Jawad was protected. Two, it could be said that, again, maybe someone thought Imam Jawad to be a child, and that as a child, him saying that, no, I need to do this and go through this door and I need to go through this, they would brush him aside and say, no, you're still too small. You have no idea what you're talking about. We have to protect you. So the value that even though Imam Jawad knew what the right thing was to do, that people may not try to listen to him because they thought they were protecting him, Imam Raza steps in and sets the guidance and sets the explanation of what it is that should be done in the situation. And he cements the authority and position of Imam Jawad as the guide for the community and the one who has the responsibility to solve the problems, regardless of the youth of his age. And it could very well be that what made people take Imam Jawad seriously and listen to the orders of Imam Jawad and cemented the authority of Imam Jawad over people was this instruction. One of the consequences of this is that we call our Imam Jawad. Jawad means someone who is very generous and giving, who's known for his jood, his generosity. And the Imam, from a very young age, always having these financial resources and taking care of each of these people, it was one of the attributes that he became known by, even in his youth, that he's known as the generous one. Until today, we call him Imam al-Jawad, the one who is generous. The other attribute that he's very famously known as Imam al-Taqi, the pious one, is an interesting attribute as well, too, that it's not typically associated with someone who's very young. To be very pious is usually assumed to be an attribute of someone who's very old, who spent years of his life in worship before he's known as the one who is pious. The ibadat of Imam Jawad, the ibadat of Imam al-Taqi, the ibadat of Muhammad ibn Ali, Abu Ja'far, the Imam, our Imam, was such that from his youth he was deserving of this attribute, and there was no one in competition with him who was more deserving of the attribute of being known as the pious, the God-fearing one, the one who attained such a great status. Famously, this period in which Imam Jawad is answering the questions of the people, guiding the people, having the authority over all of the people in Medina, to the extent where people recognize the authority of Imam Jawad as being both the son of Imam Rada, the Imam after Imam Rada, the guide for humanity, the supporter both financially and spiritually, which was unusual for a child to possess. All of Medina came to accept this status and knew that he was the source of guidance. And the Imam would, like his father, sit inside Masjid al-Nabawi and answer the questions of people and give them guidance. Until the age of 9, either 8 or 9 years of age, when all of a sudden Imam Rada is poisoned in the city of Khurasan. And Imam Jawad, by the miracle of Imamat, goes to his father and is the one who shrouds and prays over his father and buries his father. It's one of the miracles of Imamat that only an Imam buries an Imam. And which is why those who narrate, the servant of Imam Raza narrates, when I had locked the door and the only one inside of the house was me and Imam Raza, suddenly a boy appeared and I didn't know where he came from. And he went and laid himself on the chest of Imam Raza and wept there until Imam Raza told him that he has to leave. And that again, that boy came when it came time for the ghusl and the shrouding of Imam Raza, and eventually to pray over Imam Rada. And thus began the dawr of the Imamat of Imam Jawad. Next week, inshallah, we'll take the time to discuss what happens after this event and how is it that Imam Jawad is forced into a relationship with the daughter of Ma'mun, Fadl, as well as how this process continues, where the work and the effort of the Imam continues to both preserve Islam, guide humanity, and teach us about our own faith. We ask Allah, by the right of this day, by the right of those who are present, those who are absent, khususan the Imam of our time who is absent, that, oh Allah, hasten the reappearance of Sahib al-Zaman. Ya Allah, by the right of this Tuesday night, the wasila of Ahl al-Bayt, protect all the mu'mineen wherever they are. Give peace and security to all those who are suffering. Give health and shifa'ah to all those who are sick. Fulfill our hajat by the wasila of Ahl al-Bayt. Give us tawfiq that we are those who are pious and close to you, Allah, and that our children are more pious than us and more beloved to Allah. O Allah, keep us on the upright path of Islam. Entitle us to ziyarat of Ahl al-Bayt in this world and the shifa of Ahl al-Bayt in the hereafter. Remembering all of our marhumeen, remembering all those who have gone before us that have brought us to this religion of Islam. 1 Surah Fatiha, 3 times Surah Ikhlas, with your loudest of salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin.